victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Good morning and welcome to a preview edition of the Tip Sheet podcast. As always, I'm your host John, also known as 4020, joining me to break down a couple of games out of the junior reps in round 3, as well as a quick peek, and maybe a pick of the team that's going to win. In the final week of the NRL trials, it's my good mate 60s, also known as Craig, big fella. Always glad to have you on board. We're here to talk about a few games, but it's an abbreviated round this week because no Tash Gow, no Lisa Fiola, but still plenty of football to talk about, mate.
Mate, looking forward to this preview podcast. I just realised it's less than 12 hours since we were live with the news podcast as we record this here on a early Wednesday morning. So this is the lot of squeezing in podcasts. John and I just sort of try to get the recordings done when it's a recording version, when we best can. But John, just before we kick off with the preview, of course, a shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And of course, and most importantly, Paraleagues, the home of the Eels, because they back junior rugby league to the hilt in the Parramatta district. And the generosity is unrivaled. They're always contributing in excess of $350,000 to junior rugby league in the Parramatta district. Of course, the end result of that is the elite pathway system that exists in the Eels, where all of those local players and a few recruits funnel into the elite teams for the boys and the girls. So again, we thank Paraleagues. Don't forget, voting closes this Friday, not only for the position of electors, of directors, but also for the special resolutions for which we're voting against. If you haven't already done so, please check out the special post by Roly Poly Eel, who has broken down the 4 member proposed special resolutions and explained why you need to vote against those 4 member proposed special resolutions. And you only have till 5 p.m. Friday to vote electronically or by postal vote. If you go in to the AGM in person, you can vote then. But if you're not, as most people don't attend, please vote by Friday, 5 p.m. So, John, we've got that abbreviated weekend of junior reps, as you said. The girls are on a bye, and the boys take on the other half of the joint venture out at Wests, where before they took on the West Magpies, and this week the Mats and the Ball are taking on the West Tigers. So let's kick off.
Balmain Tigers, thank you very much. That's the yes.
Balmain Tigers.
Yeah.
Yes,
they're sporting the old logo there with Balmain on it. So yeah, the Western Suburbs Magpies and Balmain Tigers in their split identities.
Talk about an identity crisis. We wonder why there's issues that have happened at the West Tigers over the years. Well, I guess they have to satisfy You're servicing
2 different branches of history, aren't you? Which is always difficult, and it makes it. I mean, if you're a Western Suburbs junior, I suppose you ultimately would be aspirational to be a Tiger, but it is very odd to be a Magpie for years and then be a Tiger. So it's a difficult.
It is tough, and they are 2 different geographical locations as well, which I guess in some ways necessitates having 2 pathways teams, but for the girls, they're just simply the West Tigers in their pathways. So maybe it's going to head that way. Who knows? Anyway, we're focusing on the Eels, of course, with this preview. So, John, can you take us through the Harold Matts team and the Eels selections there?
Yeah, it's a double header out at Leichardt for these two games, Craig. We start off at 10:30 a.m. in the Harold Matts. Parramatta Eels taking on the Balmain Tigers, like we just mentioned. Tigers coming to this game off a bye, just the one game played. They did lose this one in the Harold Mats by 18 points to Central Coast Roosters, so not an ideal start for them in round one. They head into the bye and then come back out to take on Parramatta Eels now. Eels look like this, though. Not too many changes this week, if any, I believe. Liam Martin at fullback, Leonard Salter and William Mamia Epe on the wings. Tyler Lama and Lorima CSC are in the centres. Levi Perrott and Caleb Leotau are in the halves. Front row, Christopher Swali'i and Curtis Brown are your bookends. Flynn Manua at dummy half. In the back row, Jake Capavilla, Khan Jackson and Hayden Bell. On the bench, Spencer Sorensen, Tyson Paletu, Thomas Jackson and Winston Tahi. Extend the roster there for the Eels. Elijah Al-Zahim, Dion Haynes, Nixon O'Connor and Danny Abu Hamid. For their effort, the Tigers, they've got 16 named and then an 18th man. So I'm not sure if Max Colpin, their 18th man, just comes into the bench or if there's just a player missing from their lineup there. But yeah, Eels unchanged, coming off the back of a good win over the Cronulla Sharks, 20-10 victors out at Henson Park, looking to improve on 3-0 on the season, and they're really enjoying the benefits of continuity in their playing roster right now.
John, was there also him a late inclusion the week just gone or the week before? Because he ended up playing in that game. And I have it in my head that it was last week. So it was a late, I'm sure it was ended up being a late change to the team. So it's probably unchanged from the named lineup.
Yeah.
But I think there was a late change. With calling that game, I'm sure it was Al-Zahim that ended up playing on the wing.
Yeah, so Al-Zahim came into the centres last week to replace Tyler Lama.
But it ended up flipping around. It ended up being who's on that wing over there, and it ended up playing at centre.
Oh, so it would have been William Mamia Epe coming into the
the other wing.
Leonard Salter coming into the centre.
Salter played centre, and Al-Zahim
played
on the wing,
edge sideline.
So I don't know whether there was an injury or whatever that happened there, but that was. Yeah. Going
back to this game, we do have Lama back named in the centres, so we'll have to wait and see on game day if he'll turn out, I suppose. But just that one change there for the Parramatta Eels on game day last week. Otherwise, enjoying fairly good continuity in their playing roster.
Yes. John, it's early on in the season. It's hard to get a handle on opposing teams, but if we have a look at the Balmain Tigers in the first round, they lost to the Central Coast Roosters, and they had a bye then last week. So there's not really too much form for us to go on there. However, that's not a great start to the season for them. You'd have to assume that maybe they've still got some early season issues to sort out. It's not that the Eels are their full realised potential early in the season, but it's been nonetheless a really strong start for the Eels going the 2 from 2 to commence the season. You want to keep banking those points because you don't want any mid to late season in such a short season pressure on you in terms of your place on the table. And the Eels have done what they've needed to do. I think the combinations are still working their way out. There's still those sorts of errors that you get in junior pathways football. Last week we spoke ad nauseum about completing the set after points, because you don't do that, you're inviting the opposition straight back into the contest, and that was the case last week.
It's such a simple concept, and it's only the Parramatta Eels that are guilty of falling, victim in this instance. But yeah, there's a reason why coaches drum on about it as such an important pillar of their coaching principles. Is once you score points, if you then give them the ball back immediately, you just lose all momentum, and even worse, you go into negative momentum in the game because they get the chance to then hit back on the scoreboard, take the momentum, get the ball back. So while it does sound like such a truism to bang on about, it is a truism for a reason.
It was 4 restarts after points, 3 errors. In the 4 restarts. So and now it may sound overly critical to go on about it, but that's a reasonably simple error to correct.
Yeah.
Just to you maybe might have a single error because of circumstance after points, because the opposition is obviously going to try to have some say in it. But in this instance, I think it's something that the Eels can address fairly quickly. I'm sure it's been spoken about in the video review. And given that once the Eels control possession, they're very, very hard to hold out. I think that'll be, getting those completions right will be a goal this week. It's interesting with the use of CSCU. They probably, and I'm not sure whether it was a case of they didn't overplay their hand last week with that, or they didn't get it to him enough. And you don't like to single out players, but without question, he's a strike weapon that's there. Now, he was competing for the fullback spot as well with Liam Martin, and I tell you what, Liam Martin's been a very, very consistent performer too thus far, and I can see, and I think he might have come from the Newcastle region, John, and I can see in his play why Josh Hodgson opted for him in the fullback spot. I believe there were probably 3 players in the squad, at least, that could play fullback, and it was always going to be a tough selection for Hodgson to determine which one of those players got the nod there. But the Eels can't, and supporters can't question that selection of CSC in the centres, because he's been a weapon there, and then you've been able to include someone as consistent as Liam Martin at fullback. So as the spine develops throughout the season, I think Liam Martin's going to play a huge role in the Eels' fortunes.
Yeah, and that development of the spine was going to be my main talking point here, Craig, in that the Eels have gone 2-0 in the first 2 weeks without having to leverage too much pressure on their spine. We've had other parts of the team be really strong. You mentioned CSU out wide, but also the front row's been very good. The back row and Capavilla and Jackson have had some nice moments. And not to say that Parrott and Leotawa haven't done a good job, but I think that they're just going to be building, and it's not the crescendo right now, but I would like to see them continue to take those steps this week. I think Parrott's been pretty handy on that left edge, playing some nice short balls to Jackson down that side, and ditto for Callow and Capavilla on the right. But yeah.
He's interesting to look at Parrott too, because I think he's a very solid defender, and I think for an under 17s 5'8", he's a reasonably big build as well for a 5'8". Whether 5'8" becomes the path that he takes, or whether he ends up moving into the forwards is another
back
matter.
row or something like that. You never know if this early on in the projections. But yeah, I just like to see them continue to grow, because they've had a really nice foundation, and I think that they're now starting to feel themselves in their combinations, and they now have a chance to really blossom there. And I think that will be key for the Parramatta Eels, going from being a very good team to being genuine contenders at some point later this season.
Yeah, I'm starting. I think the edge players are warming to their task as well. You mentioned there Capavilla and Khan Jackson. That combination with Parrott and Jackson. So a lovely short ball that was delivered last week from Parrott to Jackson for the try. I mean, it was tremendous deception, because it was such a sharply delivered short ball. When I say sharply delivered, it was soft hands with it, but it just seemed to come so quickly as well. So look, I'm starting to think Khan Jackson could be a bit of a weapon over on that left-hand side. And Capavilla, he's that player that's got a real good motor, high work rate. He's that rangy sort of build as well. And of course, part of the Capavilla family who are well known in the Parramatta Junior Rugby League district. I think primarily were associated with Wenty, but I think have been involved with the Hills Bulls as well. But It's always good to see other generations of footballers coming through. You track the surnames coming through in the district, and you know when someone is a multi-generational local in the Parramatta district. So good to see there.
But yeah, in the context of this game, mate, it's a hard one to read because, like we said at the start of the preview, Tigers coming to this game with just one result to their name. It was a loss, but they then headed into a bye. So they're going to be like fresh. They're going to be really charged up for this one. It's a home game for them. Obviously, we're going to be favouring the Parramatta Eels with our game tip here. But again, it's like we're sort of facing the unknown here. So if the Tigers got to jump on the Parramatta Eels, I would not be surprised with the benefit of that bye and the fuel of coming off a loss. They'll be hungry. So Eels need to be on their game, need to minimise the errors that we raised earlier in the preview, because these are sort of games that can be trap games if you do start turning the ball over after points, if you do not get to your kicks.
And look, Leichardt Oval, what do they call it? The eighth wonder of the world. You know my opinions on Leichardt Oval. However, as a ground to watch the game from at junior rep level, it is a good ground to watch the games from because of your proximity to the playing field. You can hear a lot of the calls that are going on, as you can at the smaller suburban venues that junior reps played at as well. The only thing is parking is
even for a junior reps game, it's still brutal.
It is always an issue, simply because the location of Leichardt Oval down on the water there, there's a lot of recreational activities that are going on in that region, not to mention the other sports fields that are being used. And then you've
got Dalton House having events hosted on the weekends. You've got, is it the Rowing Club there? That's just down the road from the stadium?
Yeah. As I said, you've got the other playing fields there. So
there's a lot happening in that area. Yeah.
A lot happening. So you always have to be prepared to try to scout a little bit for parking. Sometimes you might get lucky. There's a parking area right beside the ground if you get in there nice and early. But you do have to expect some issues around parking. But I would encourage people to get down there, watch the game live, get behind our Eels, because as John said, home game, and Tigers always seem to find something extra playing at Leichardt Oval. So we're both tipping the Eels, I assume there, John. I'm going to tip the Eels to win comfortably here and go for a 16 points plus.
Yeah, just to clarify, not Dalton House, it was La Montage, the big reception hall down there. But yeah, I think the Parramatta Eels, if they continue to play the way they have been and can apply a bit more polish, should be pretty firm favourites here. But I will tip the Parramatta Eels with the speculative concern that the Tigers will be up for this game, that they're going to be pretty fired up coming out of that bye. So I'll go Eels by about 10.
Yeah, nice and conservative there, John.
Yeah. Which brings us to the second half of that doubleheader at Leichardt. Midday kickoff here, 12 o'clock p.m. Eels and the Balmain Tigers meeting in the SG Ball. Parramatta coming off another 40-point victory, making it two in a row, between last week's Cronulla Sharks and the first week the Western Suburbs Magpies. Taking on the Tigers, the Eels looking like this. Ryles Davis at fullback, Lorima Rokasuka and Cyrus Bloomfield on the wings. Nathan Howlett and Cordell Pritchard at the centres. In the halves, Cameron Bambut, who was named at fullback last week, but actually played 5'8" with the late change of Talon Rosati out, reprises that role this week. No Talon Rosati, so he partners Lincoln Fletcher in the halves. Jackson Coyner moves into the front row because the Eels' front row stocks are way down this week. No Ryder Talangi due to concussion. No Stephen Nunn due to what I suspect was a hamstring. There was a comment in a live stream last night, Craig, at the end that they saw Stephen walking off holding his hemi. And then no Mason Ong, who I believe would be a concussion protocol thing as well. So down three of your first choice starting props, or four starting props, because you can't get three starting props into two positions. So Jackson Coyner shows his versatility stepping up into the front row. He'll partner Nicholas Kodarak, who gets the start for the first time this year. Jerry Trey Stewart is unchanged at dummy half. On the edges, Michael Nauer and Sterling Farmui are unchanged as well. But with Jackson caught into the front row, Samuel Polly comes into the starting lock forward position. So again, kind of like last week, where you have to call in Rylie Davis to start at fullback. You're getting a player in Samuel Polly, first year actually ball player, but a genuine talent like Rylie that comes into the starting position as a reminder of how deep this SG Ball squad is. Go to interchange now where it's Wesley Picotti, Billy Funene. We get our first look at Viliami Fafita this week, and it's all about big ins, but Chris Petrus is on the bench as well, so massive in there. Extended roster, Kobe Raven, Ollie Walker. Walker obviously did the halfback last week, doing a really solid job for the Parramatta Eels, but with Lincoln Fletcher back in the mix, he drops back to the extended bench.
Yeah, John, what can you say to be down some of those key players and still to be able to call in stars to replace them? It's when I say stars, I'm talking about players that have been identified for their future potential within the Eels. And unlike their Harold Matts counterparts, the Balmain Tigers SG Ball had a convincing
big
win
win,
over
yeah.
the Coast,
Yep. Almost
Roosters.
The inverse. The Mats lost by 18 points. They won by about 26 points. So big win for them. So they're coming out of their bye with plenty of momentum. They've got the home game. And, yeah, this one shapes up to be a real important game early in terms of early shapings on the ladder. Two form teams, but the Tigers have just the one game to their name. So can they back it up?
Yeah, well, there seems to be a rivalry that's building between the Eels and the Tigers in their different iterations across the elite pathways grades. And this one could be interesting because this is the chance for the Tigers team to make a statement against a team that's touted as, I guess, certain finalists, but probably tipped by many to be likely grand finalists. And we don't want to hype the team. And we've always said as well that the priority is the development of these young players to their potential down the track, and that titles are the added bonus in the pathway process. But as we look at it, and we have to look at it as commentators on the matches themselves and on the competition, I think we are quite bullish about the prospects of this team. We've spoken about sometimes their greatest opposition is themselves in making sure they don't beat themselves in games. Last week, I think, was evidence of that, where they had some problems with completions in the first half and got it sorted in the second half and really just kicked away.
And it was night and day, wasn't it? The literal game of two halves, by definition, where they went into the sheds at halftime on parity, equal scoreboard for the Sharks, and then just came out and blew them off the park. So, like you said, I look at some of those teams out there, and I know AJ's Roosters look really good this year. There's going to be a few other squads that will emerge and separate themselves from the pack. It looks like Melbourne, the Rabbitohs, the Seagulls, the Knights, the Raiders, and the Roosters are all undefeated after the first two opening bracket rounds. So there's some early front runners there, and in that group, some more will then separate themselves again. But at the end of the day, the Eels, if they take care of their own business, are going to be very, very hard to stop, and that's going to be the challenge for them. We're 2 games in, and it's a 9-week regular season period plus 3 or so games in the postseason. So you're looking at still 3 months of quality football here for them. Can they put together 3 months without the lapse? And that's going to be tough, because in football, it's so easy to have a lapse. You've got, in first grade, it's 80 minutes, but in these games, 70? I mean, it's 70 minutes in the SG Ball, 35-minute halves.
Yeah.
So you got 70 minutes to lock in without significant errors, and that doesn't happen too often because it's hard to, as a 17-man unit, not to have a lapse in concentration, not to just check off or check out for one play that can cost you. So it's going to be on them to maintain the rage, to maintain the intensity. And again, this week is another one where they're versing an early season. They're not one of the 2-win teams, but the Tigers are an undefeated team right now. And with the benefit of that fresh legs out of the bye, they'll be looking to spring an ambush on the Parramatta Eels.
What I'm looking for, John, from Parramatta is some of that faster play through the ruck. Yeah,
and that's going to be a challenge this week. No Ryder, no Ong, no Nunn. that's a lot of your leg speed and impact around the middle gone. And obviously Jackson Coyne has been fantastic. And off the bench, guys like Kodarak and Farnani have been good. But can Fafita, can Petrus in a roll off the bench bring that sort of impact? Like I look at this game, I think Chris Petrus is probably going to be used as a prop, Craig. Looking at, you got Nauer and Farmui on the edges. You got Polly at lock forward. Petrus played a little bit of prop / lock in the trials. So, can he be an X factor for the Eels in that regard? Can he help share that load without 3 recognised middles ahead of him out? I certainly hope so. But
John, his physicality last year as a first-year SG ball player, and then going to Flegg as well and making an impact in Flegg with his physicality, that says to me, yeah, he can do that. Yeah. He absolutely can do that. He plays an up-tempo game. He'll be looking to engage the defenders or to put them on the back foot. So I have no doubt whatsoever that he can bring some genuine impact from the bench. But in terms of the starting props, well, we know the quality of Coyner and Kotarak. I don't have any problems with him starting.
No, he's been good off the bench.
He maintains that rage when he comes onto the field.
Good physicality off the interchange. Yeah.
He's been an interesting pickup for the Eels. I think from the Bears, was he not?
I believe so. From the Bears.
Yeah, so where was he originally? Was he originally a Penrith Pathways player? Anyway, whatever the background was, he's an Eel now, and he's part of Eels Pathways, and he's been to an extent a revelation in this Eels team. He caught the eye because we had with he and Stephen Nunn wearing the headgear. It was just a shade or two apart on that colour spectrum.
Magenta and vermilion, they're really vibrant headgears going.
So you had to double check who it was that's just taken that the barnstorming hit up. Just was it that headgear? So they both had outstanding pre-season trials, and we already knew what Stephen Nunn was going to bring, but additionally, this is Stephen's first year in SG ball, so hopefully it is only a minor issue that Stephen's dealing with that's causing his absence this week. But as we said, this squad goes deep in terms of their talent.
And we didn't even mention the combination of Bamblett and Fletcher in the halves. The SG ball get Lincoln back from the NRL trial that he took part in against the Sharks, and he partners Bamblett now. When you lose Talon Rosati for an unknown, we don't know, it's presumably an injury because he was out before the game last week. But to have Bamblett be able to step in the halves and partner Fletcher is a genuine luxury. Riley Davis at fullback, so the Eels still very well set in the spine, very well set.
They arguably, there might be some teams that the people that follow their team might equally boast that they have the best spine in the competition. But I think the Eels, and I mentioned Jaira Stewart as well in the last podcast.
Jaira Stewart having a very good game against the Sharks.
Yeah. So, his service has been, I think, instrumental in the Eels' good form in the early season. So I think it's arguably the strongest spine in the competition. Mm-hmm. I'd expect it to be dominant again. And the interesting thing was, I think Bamblett might have got the fan-voted award on the stream last week. But, and whilst he played very well, I had him probably down about 4th or 5th in terms of the contributions. That's not a knock on Cameron at all, because I think he is an incredible prospect coming through the Eels system. But I thought there was some really, really strong contributors last week, and one of those, of course, was Riley Davis at fullback. and I think I had him as right up there in the best on field last week. So it's a luxury to be in, where you can play Cameron Bamblett at 5'8" and have Riley Davis at fullback. It's and Riley's in his junior year of SG ball as well. So if he was being squeezed out by Cameron Bamblett playing fullback, in the scheme of things, it wasn't too much of an issue, because Riley would get his opportunity next season there, and that's just a matter of course when you're trying to juggle graduates from the Harold Matts with incumbents from the SG ball.
And there is a lot of youth in this team too. It's sort of understated given how much we talk about some of the senior players. But you mentioned Davis. Cyrus is in his first year SG ball, right? He was a second-year Mats player last year.
Yeah, yes.
Then you go to the forward pack where Michael Nauer and Samuel Polly are first-year players. So, yeah, there's obviously there's plenty
Stephen Nunn when he's playing.
Stephen Nunn, who's absent from the team this week, yeah. So, yeah, they've got a nice balance of the first-year guys up against those senior players and plenty of talent across the board. So, yeah, inexperience and experience relative to the grade, but plenty of talent to a man. So, Eels, yeah, taking on the Tigers here, 12 o'clock p.m. I think they get the job done here, Craig. They've been very good across the first 2 weeks. They're going to be, again, if they lose to the Tigers, there'll be some combination of the Tigers roaring out of the bye and then the Eels also undoing themselves with errors.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. John, it's hard for me to suggest any sort of points margin in this, simply because we don't know how well the Tigers played against the Central Coast Roosters, as opposed to whether the Roosters were just struggling in that first week. So we have to give them respect for a strong win, and as such, not overly hype another big win to go along with the previous big wins for the Eels. So I'll just say that the Eels will get the job done here, simply on the strength of the squad as a whole.
Yeah,
forget individual stars. This is just a strong team. It's a strong team.
That needs to be emphasised. Not every win, even for a team as strong as this, is going to be a blowout win in the SG Ball this year. They're going to have games where they're going to eke past their opponents by 2 points, by 4 points, by 6 points, maybe by a field goal in some games, because of the nature of what rugby league is, and any given, in this case, Saturday, since they play on Saturdays for the most part. And as we said, the Tigers have a good win to their name. They're coming out of the bye. They're going to be recharged. So, yeah, maybe we're back in the Eels, but it might just be a 2-point win here. It might not be a 26-point win.
And, John, scrapping out a win like that is also part of the learning process.
It's a real skill. It's a skill, isn't it? It's a part of a learning process of being a footballer. Absolutely.
And I guess also coping with a loss is also part of the learning process. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately, but it is part of the learning process. For a number of them, there was the disappointment of last year's result, but not just the SG Ball. The Harold Matts gave away what was a match-winning lead in their first
week final,
in their finals loss.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to think there were lessons learnt by all the players involved in this game, whether they were playing SG Ball or Harold Matts. Titles weren't won. The final series were finished by losses. They both qualified for finals last year. Lessons learned in the finals last year. We move on to this year and continue the learning process. And as I just said, even when you eke out a win, a narrow win, if you play ugly football to win, it's all part of that learning process. We're both going for the Eels in this, of course, but we're expecting them to be able to flex their strength as a very, very deeply talented squad. So, which now, John, gives us the opportunity, because there's only these 2 trials, and we were going to do it anyway, but we'll include now our preview of the Eels trial clash with the Roosters, because this is this is really stepping up a notch in terms of the opposition, because the Roosters have named close to a full-strength lineup for the starting 13 in this game.
Yeah, same day, different venue, 6 o'clock p.m. kickoff down in up in Polytech Park, Gosford. Eels going up to Central Coast-ish territory there, playing the Sydney Roosters in the final clash of the preseason trials for the blue and gold and the tricolours. Quick look at the Roosters, Craig. You mentioned they're near full strength. No Tupou, no Toya in the back line, but otherwise they look like this. James Tedesco at fullback, Tommy Talau and Mark Nwanganitawaze on the wings, Billy Smith and Fetalaya Ponga in the centres. Daly Cherry-Evans plays at 5'8", not halfback, as he partners Sam Walker, who has the 7 on his back. Breakout player last year, Na'afawa White, leads the way in the front row. He'll work alongside Lindsay Collins. New recruit Reece Robson in the 9. Angus Crichton, Nat Butcher, and Blake Steep are the back row, 11, 12, and 13 respectively. On the bench, Connor Watson, Sua Wong, Spencer Lenu, and Egan Butcher. Their extended roster, we've got Fiketti, Iolu, Savala, Ramsey, Rodwell. So the two brothers there, one's the winger and one's the young Harles prospect in Toby, and Junior Tupou rounding out their bench. Then for the Parramatta Eels, we talked about it last night or on Tuesday night with the Team List News podcast. But at fullback, it's Isaiah Yongi, Bailey Simonson and Josh Adokara on the flanks, Will Penasini and Sean Russell in the centres. So Russell getting in there ahead of Brian Kelly. In the halves, we had our first look at Jonah Pezzett and Mitchell Moses together. Jermaine Hopgood is back after missing last week with paternity leave. He'll partner Junior Barlaw, Riley Smith at dummy half, Jack Williams on the right edge, Kitiana Katonga down the left, Jack DeBellin at lock forward. First look at the new recruit there as well. On the bench, it's Dylan Walker, Sam Tuavaiti, Matt Dury, Talon Silva. Then a big extended roster for the blue and gold: Charlie Goma, Kelma Tuolangi, Joash Papali, Brian Kelly, Jordan Samroni, Ronald Volkman. Then you got our first of the rookies, Uraz Nanva. Then you got Jake Tungor. Then the final two rookies in Lorenzo Talatana and Tiankan Brown.
Yeah, it's probably close to the team that's going to be named for round one. You'd have to think. We spoke last night about the battle for the backline positions involving Kelly and whether he would be able to oust Sean Russell out of centre, and if so, did that throw competition onto the right wing between Simonson and Russell? Shawnee's pretty much through last week's trial and also his efforts through the preseason, where he's been Mr. Fix-It, as I've suggested before, playing in a multitude of positions. He really had a great trial. He smashed it in his time on the field last week. Both sides of the game, attack, defence. He couldn't have asked for more from Sean Russell. This will be Brian Kelly's first outing for the Eels. He only joined the squad post-Christmas. He's trained probably more exclusively on that side of the field beside the Fox. So I believe it was either he getting that centre position or then Sean Russell maybe, as I said, competing with Bailey Simonson for the wing position because of Sean's versatility. But I think we're going to see this team in round one, as I said, John.
Yeah, it's hard not to look at that as the default configuration for the Eels in any given neutral matchup. That 1-17 seems pretty reflective of what Jason Ryles has been looking for between what we saw. A
couple of things, John. A couple of questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, do you see the jersey numbers mattering to the Roosters halves, because they pretty much played reverse of those numbers for their teams last year? And secondly, how many minutes do you think the first starters for both teams are likely to get?
So with the Roosters halves combination, it's the inversion of what we've seen historically. I mean, Walker has worn the 7 for the Roosters numerous occasions and has been billed and groomed as their long-term halfback. But his game does tailor itself somewhat more to being a 6 than a 7, whereas Daly Cherry-Evans has been a career 7, one premierships as a 7, one origins as a 7.
And Savala was really getting
and Savala was
that
doing
step
the
last year.
organising and kicking. That's right, in the back half of last year, where he really found his groove in the team. There's always an argument that those numbers are somewhat cosmetic, although some also think that the numbers are super important. That some players will play better with a certain number on their back in the halves. I would argue that this is maybe an attempt to psychologically build up Sam Walker in the long term, to push him towards being the game managing, the game controlling seven. He's always had the flashes of brilliance. He's a, I wouldn't even say shrewd. He's just an instinctual playmaker off the cuff. Like, he's got all the tools to be dynamic with the heads up football, but can he step back and see the bigger picture with the seven on his back, which is what you often have. Like, you look at Mitchell Moses, who has reined in a lot of his tricks, if you want to call it that way, from when he was a young, precocious half to being more astute and more measured in how he attacks. And that's not to say he can't do the cheeky little blindside or chip and chase plays that are still in his kit bag, but Moses paces himself. He measures himself now. And I think we're looking at this here, I think that's what they're trying to push Walker to. That'd be my gut feel. If the Cherry Evans in the 6, he's there to guide Walker. Let Walker be the, quote unquote, primary playmaker, but back him up. So that's my read in that situation there. I wouldn't be surprised if Cherry Evans still takes on a lot of halfback responsibilities with the 6 on his back. But Sam Walker's their guy long term. So they're trying to build him up to be the number 7 long term. In terms of the players that will, like the starters, how long they're going to play, I think you're going to see at least a full half out of both teams. I would expect to see the changes start being rung in 45, 50 minutes in. A lot of Eels starters got a pretty good look last week. Yongi played a bit of the first half, about 2/3 of the first half. But Simonson, Penasini, Russell, Pezzett, Smith, Kautonga, and then Tuivati, Dury, and De Silva, in terms of that top 17, all got good runs. So I don't know how much more Jason Ryles needs to pump into their legs, but I think at least half a game, and then you'll see those changes come in.
Do you expect Mitch Moses to maybe play the least out of those, and then just to be taken off and wrapped in cotton wool? Because seeing Ronald Volkman named on the extended list there makes me think that he's going to play some long minutes this week.
Yeah, I think you'll see maybe 20 minutes out of Moses. Maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if it's even just a few sets, as long as he just gets through and gets to his kicks and maybe has a chance to set up a try. They're going to put him in cotton wool and have him as fit as possible for round 1.
Yeah, I think the team, the squad is tracking towards most players being, if not all players, being available for round 1. It's every preseason always sees players in and out of rehab, and that's been, I'm sure it's the case right across the NRL. It's certainly been the case at Parramatta. I've got to the point where it doesn't even concern me when I see some players in rehab or just suddenly joining the rehab group, because I think to myself, well, okay, they've probably got soreness or they've got an issue with this or that, and they just take them out of the main group and do a bit of, I guess, as much rehabilitation as it is prehabilitation as well. There's no need to push players during a preseason. Players might end up in rehab during a preseason for something they play through during the season
the regular
itself.
Season, yes, but because it's about load management at that point in the season, they just there's no games to win, so they just rest them. Yeah.
So I see that as being the case with this trial, that Jason Ryles will have probably in his mind before the game starts roughly how many minutes he'd want from each of the players based on their load that they've done during the preseason, based on what he wants to see out of them in this game. Let's face it, you know what you're going to get with certain players. It's an opportunity in this instance to have some combinations, get a bit more time together against an opponent that hasn't seen the work that's been done by the team. They've trained against each other so much through the preseason that the coaches would like to see them literally have a training run against unknown opponents. So, but you don't want it to be, you're almost keeping it like a training run where you might do a 20 to 40 minute scrimmage, but it's unlikely you're going to do an 80-minute scrimmage.
Yeah.
Full match conditions. So
Yep.
I see it as just that extension of the preseason.
Now, a question for you, mate. Obviously, we feel like the 1 to 17's fairly locked in, like not fully locked in, but from the extended roster, who stands the most to gain this week with a good performance? You got some guys that are genuinely competing for those frontline jerseys in Gaima, Tuolangi, Papali, Kelly, Samrani. But then you got some rookies there. So who stands to gain the most from a good performance against the Roosters?
Well, I think number one, with those two extra positions, first of all, you eliminate one of them because you probably lock in Joash in one of those positions. I think it then comes down to the more a case of the players who have been unlucky to miss out on, or maybe might be unlucky to miss out on the 17. So if you have a look at the bench and you see the likes of Charlie Geimer and Kilmer, they're probably in the front line of competing for that spot. Maybe as well Jordan Samrani, because he's that hybrid edge forward, centre, wing at a push position. Outside of that, look, I don't know if there's anyone who's necessarily going to push for early season. It's really just, I think the other players that are named on that extended bench, they have that opportunity to plant the seed in the coach's mind that they might be more ready for a first grade debut than he thought. So it's, to me, it's part of those first steps towards a debut for the likes of Tiancum, for example. He's by his selection last week and his performance last week, he's saying to Jason Ryles, put me in that mix of the forwards you are considering on a weekly basis. I won't let you down. And if he backs that up this week, he's probably, for mine, outside of the players unlucky to miss the selection, he's probably a player that was nowhere near on the radar for early season selection. And maybe he's still not, but he's made more fans take notice of him after his performance last week.
Yep.
Probably those that never read the preseason training reports, John.
Or the game,
weren't familiar
or
with
the game
his
blogs from last year in the flag, where he was a very, very prominent fixture in the under-21. So, yeah, look, to us, it hasn't been a surprise to see Big T emerge as a genuine candidate for a debut based on his preseason efforts. But I imagine for a lot of fans, it would have been very exciting to see his performance against the Cronulla Sharks, and now where he can back it up against the Tricolours and the Sydney Roosters. A big effort from Tiancum this week does pose some fascinating questions, because it would catapult him up the depth charts, no doubt, but Eels still. You look at Gaima, Tuolangi, go down to reserve grade Moretti and Mattielli. There's plenty of very capable middle forwards that are still in the mix that would be vying for a berth in that bench theoretically against him. But we always talk about it in the context of teams, but for an individual, you only control what you can control too. And if Tiancum's going out there taking care of business and having a good trial, backing it into good early season form in the New South Wales Cup, then he will find himself in the mix for a debut at some point.
Yeah, and we spoke about Luca, and you can throw in as well Tony Mattielli in the timing of their period of time in the rehab group was in the lead up to the trials.
Yeah,
and that's
it's the worst possible time to get nicked up, isn't it? It's just that it puts you so far behind the eight ball. But yeah, like even beyond them, you've got Saxon Prock, you've got Tyrese Lakini. There's a lot of good middle talent in Parramatta right now. So
yeah,
good problem to have.
It's a great problem to have, because the other thing too is that when you're talking about middles, someone like Jack Williams can equally play
Can shift there
on the middle, in the middle as he can on the edge.
Yep.
So he's in the mix there. If you have players edge players who are pushing up. And both of us are bullish about the future prospects of Will Latu. And he would have arguably gone close to a debut last season. And he would have the goal of playing NRL at some point this year. So it's that depth that I think a lot of observers or NRL commentators can't see in the middles, I think is there, and it's even stronger because of the fact that there are the versatile players there that can play edge or middle. That's not to say that the Eels wouldn't look to recruit in the middle, because Jason Ryles said at the fan forum, or was it he or Buckets, but it's been acknowledged that the Eels, if they've got two positions available, they would consider an outside back and a middle as recruitment options. So make of that what you will, but we're still very pleased about the depth that currently exists in the Eels pack. And maybe it's a case as well, John, when they talk about recruiting a middle, is that you've got players like Jack DeBell and Junior Parlour who are at the senior end of their career. So when the Eels, just like they were looking at with Kaloa Matangi, at bringing in someone for next year who could be a leader for the younger players and be there as someone that they're in the age group to take them into the future, that you can understand why, even with the players that are emerging in the forwards, that they would still go into the market for an elite middle forward.
Yeah. Yeah. The player to rally the middles around in those tough games, essentially. The guy that can be the banner bearer, the first one into the breach.
Yes, absolutely. So, John, we always make that point that this is just a trial. You don't get carried away with results. We spoke about the things that we liked from the trial last week. I know you've already made your inquiries about grand final tickets based on that, but we'll try to be a little bit more circumspect. Maybe we'll just make sure that we don't book holidays for September. Maybe that's just the safe point.
That's the happy compromise, I think. We're not going to pre-purchase grand final tickets. Just going to keep September, October open.
Yeah, that's it. So anyway, what are you going to be looking for? Is it more of the same this week in the trial?
Yeah, I think that is foundationally what you want to see, right, with what we saw against the Cronulla Sharks. But again, I think defensive structures, I think that's going to be a real key. Can the Eels defend repeat sets, which we saw for the most part against Cronulla? There was the one try on halftime. But line speed later into the game, I think those are the two big ones for me. Defending repeat sets against the six agains or penalties, showing line speed and aggression and defense later into the contest. In attack, I think the Eels will just ease themselves into this one with fairly simplistic structures. I don't think they're going to show any trick plays, obviously. But how do Moses and Pez work together? What's the sort of split in terms of first receiver? Is Moses going to be primarily the first receiver, or we're going to see Jonah using, because of Moses' ability to get wide with his acceleration, are we going to see, kind of like what we did with Josh last year? Josh was in the first receiver slot. Will Peasant be first receiver and let Moses get wider and attack as a pseudo fullback? That was something that the Roosters, funnily enough, did back in the days of Luke Keary, who had similar pace off the mark to Mitchell Moses. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how the outside backs can work rucking the ball out. Obviously, there's no Zach Lomax this year. Lomax, for all our grievances of him presently, did a lot of work rucking the ball out. Can Simonson, Penasini, Russell, Narakar make up the difference in the aggregate? I certainly hope so. And then, in the forward pack, pretty straightforward. I think just can they hold the rock? Like maybe they dominate the Roosters in the rock. I don't know. But can that starting pack, get some good traction? And then what can the impact guys do in Dury and Tuivasa? I've got a pretty broad strokes approach to what I'm looking for here, mate. But a lot of the stuff that we saw against the Cronulla Sharks, I'm also trying to check off here against the Roosters.
Yeah, I'm interested in what happens with the kicking with Moses and Pezzett. Will Pezzett provide a little bit more of an alternative kicker for Moses than what Dylan Brown provided in previous seasons, because I think we've seen that Pezzett has a pretty decent kicking game. His placement is he maybe doesn't have the length of the game that Moses has, but there's nothing wrong with Pezzett's kicking game, and his goal is to be a halfback, to be the game managing halfback, and to have that kicking responsibility. Now, if you know that Moses is going to do most of the kicking and you're the defending team, well, you can load up your kick pressure on him. But if you've got another option on the other side of the field, then you can go there. And I would think as well, if you've got that option on the other side of the field, maybe there's the odd kick that comes on the fourth tackle, for example. If the ball's going to the other, to the left instead of the right on a fourth tackle, maybe there's an early kick that's put in because it goes to Pezzett rather than to Moses on the right. I think it opens up a lot of options to have effectively two number sevens playing in your team, or two players who are capable of playing number seven. And as we know with Dylan was out and out of 5'8". He was mostly your running
classical
5'8".
running 5'8". Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we haven't got that with Pezzett. He certainly can take the line on, but what I've enjoyed watching him do is almost play like a halfback, but on the other side of the field to Moses. So I think it's going to open up some interesting attacking opportunities for the Eels. And let me clarify this. I haven't seen them practicing like fourth tackle kicks or anything like that, because in all honesty, a lot of what they do when they're practicing those kicks is they're looking at practicing that transition from attack to defence, and they will do opposed work where they might just have, say, 3 tackles and kick. So it's not, you're not actually seeing necessarily a game context when you're seeing the kicking game happening at Eels training. So I wasn't seeing anything that, or suggesting anything that I've seen at training in what might be an option for Pezzett and Moses in terms of that kicking game. I just think for mine, because I've seen so much of Pezzett's kicking game at training where he's been at halfback when Moses has been off the field, that I think he's got a kicking game which, although it's not the equal of Moses, it's a good kicking game, and I think he can be used as a foil for Moses and to have the opposition guessing about what's going to happen or who the ball's going to go to for the kick. So, John, all in all, we're obviously looking for an Eels win with this. I'm not as bullish about that because, to be honest, I think it's a strong lineup that we're facing.
Roosters are a legit finals team out there, and they're the games that you sort of view as a coin toss in the regular season. Based on home field advantage and form coming into a particular fixture. But for us, the big thing is hitting some of those KPIs that we're sort of discussing just then. And the biggest one is getting through unscathed. No injuries. That's going to be the key one that will shape our round one sort of team, is who gets through. And if everyone gets through unscathed, and if someone does get nicked up, how bad is it? So they're the key ones for us. Just looking forward to watching this football game, mate. 6 o'clock on Saturday night. It's a nice slot to have your dinner and watch the footy. And we'll be live in the post game, same time as last week, except on a Saturday, of course, about 8:15 p.m. to break down everything that we saw in that game. And hopefully everyone looks forward to that one.
John, I'll give you 2 things that I'm looking for, and I'm going to go to individuals for this. I'm interested in seeing the performance of Jack de Belin.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a good preseason, and it'll be interesting to see what he adds at this early stage to the Eels lineup. The second player that I'm interested in with this one is Talon De Silva. I don't think we saw the best of him in his trial last week. I'm not throwing a criticism at Talon, but I think I saw more from him during the preseason itself than I did in the trial. And I believe we might see a little bit more of the Talon De Silva that I've watched in the preseason than what we saw last week in that trial. So two players for mine that are on my watch list, Jack de Bell and Talon De Silva.
Nice.
So any individuals for yourself?
I'm keen to see how the combination of Pezzett and Katonga goes together, because we saw Riley saw Jonah on the opposite edge last week, and now he gets to divert or revert back to the left. So how that edge combination works together. And then the two impact forwards, Tuavati and Dury. Can they bring serious juice off the interchange after impressing as starters last week? So that's where I'm looking.
Sounds good, mate. So that just brings us to the end of our preview podcast. Don't forget that our junior preview podcast will continue through the preseason when we separate the NRL and lower grades previews and have an additional podcast for those. Our junior reps preview podcast will continue because we believe that Eels supporters deserve a dedicated junior reps podcast to be able to keep track of what's happening in Eels Academy. And I'm sure that it's something that is appreciated by supporters out there, being able to, even if they don't get to watch the games, to hear about what's happening in the pathways. So our thanks, of course, to our sponsors who make this possible, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and, of course, Paraleagues, the home of the Eels, who have such an incredible generosity with their funding of junior football in the Parramatta precinct. So much appreciated there. If anyone wants to jump on board out there with sponsoring the Cumberland Throw and our content, just get in touch. Be more than happy to talk to you about sponsorship opportunities with TCT throughout this season, especially if you really enjoy Pathways football. If you want to jump on and specifically sponsor some of our Pathways content, we'd be more than happy to speak with you about that. Thank you to everyone who's been listening to this or watching this on YouTube. Thank you, John, for your availability and flexibility with our podcast recordings. You've done such an amazing job in fitting around when I've been available, because it's been a little bit challenging at times, but I really do appreciate that, mate. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels, para proud.